Welcome to our tutorial on the Signavio Decision Manager. This week's lectures will focus on decision management and decision modeling, and we encourage you to deepen your knowledge by applying it. So, similar to our tutorial on modeling business processes with the Signavio Process Editor, I will now show you how to model decisions using the Signavio Decision Manager. To use the Decision Manager, you log into the Signavio platform as usual at academic.signavio.com or editor.signavio.com, and there you will see the Signavio platform. You already know the basic layout of that platform, and now to create decision models, you select from over here from this list a business decision diagram, which essentially is a decision model according to DMN 1.0. Right, so a decision model essentially consists of two levels, as you will learn in lecture video 6.2, the decision requirements level and the decision logic level. The decision requirements level shows the structure of the decision, so what is necessary to make the decision. And to create such a requirements diagram, I will take an example from the lecture, also video 6.2, which is a decision about covering an insurance claim that a customer can make after, for example, a bike theft occurred. Right, so to model such a diagram, you can use the elements over here, and similar to when you model business processes, also here you have the possibility of selecting from a different number of elements. So, for example, you could use the core elements of DMN, but you can also use a more complete list of elements. But for our purposes now, the core elements are sufficient. Right, so usually when modeling a requirements diagram, we start with modeling the top-level decision. So we take this decision element and drag it onto the modeling page. Now we can also give it a name, which in our case is decide on claim coverage. Right, so in the end, this decision will tell us whether or not to accept the coverage claim. And of course, to be able to make this decision, we need some input data on which this decision can be based. And we can model this by either selecting the input data element from over here and connecting it to the decision, or we can select the decision element directly and then the input data element that is displayed next to it, and then this way the input data element is directly connected to the decision element. All right, let's say that we have three input data elements. Of course, we'd also like to give them a name, so the first input comes from a claim data object. And now this claim is a complex data object, but I'm only interested in certain attributes of that object. So what I can do is I say claim.value, and by this I express that I'm interested in the attribute called value of that claim data object. Right. Similarly, I say that I want to use the attribute theft time of this data object, and then finally I use another data object called customer contract, and of that object I want to use the type of the contract. So depending on the type of the customer contract, the claims are handled differently. Finally, we need to specify the types of these input data objects. So for example, the value of the claim will be some kind of number, and we need to specify this. And to do this, we select it, and then from the right-hand side of the editor, we can open the attributes pane. Here you can set various attributes of the selected element, for example its name or its color, and right now we want to set the type or domain of the element, and by default it's text, but we want it to be a number. Right. And then this number can also have a unit. In our case it's a currency, and then we have the currency unit euros. Similarly, we say that the theft time also is a number, and the customer contract now will be an enumeration, meaning that here under items we can enumerate all possible values that this variable can take on, and in our case that's gold, so there can be gold customers and standard customers. Okay, so this completes the requirements level of our decision model. We can now see what inputs are necessary to make the decision. Now the concrete decision logic still needs to be specified for each decision of that requirements diagram. We only have one decision right now for which we need to specify the logic, and we can do this by clicking on this small table icon over here. Then a window will pop up, and here we have various ways of specifying the decision logic, either a decision table, but there are also other options. We can click on literal expression over here, and then we can, for example, just type in arbitrary text that in some way describes how the decision should be taken. We can also pursue a more formal approach by saying expression here. Then we have this equation text box in which we can use the variables that we just defined, the input variables, but we can also use predefined functions. Finally, this link option here enables you to link your decision to already existing decision models that you may have created beforehand and that you can reuse for your current decision model. But since we haven't defined anything yet, we are going to do this with the use of a decision table. Right, so here you can see the skeleton of the decision table. It consists of columns, one column for each input and a column for the output. The input columns already have names and types for the inputs, but for the output column we still need to specify the name, and let's just call it output, and its type will be an enumeration with possible values yes and no. So saying that the output says yes, the claim is accepted, or no, it's not accepted. All right, so let's add some rules. Basically, a rule consists of cells. One cell for each input and one cell for the output. And each cell can have an operator, which we can select by double-clicking on the leftmost area of the cell. Here we have a bunch of operators, and it can have a value that we can specify by double-clicking on the right area of the cell. So, for example, if we want to express that all claims that are below 200 euros are accepted independent of the time of the theft and the type of the contract, then we would say we need the operator less, type in the value 200, and just select yes from this list here. Right, so this says that if the claim value is less than 200 euros and any theft time is possible here and any contract type is possible, then we say we output yes, the claim is accepted. Right, so let's add another rule for values of claims that are between 2 and 500 euros. We do this by now choosing the operator included and typing in the interval 200 to 500, like this. And again, we leave open the theft time, but we say that the type of the contract must be gold. So it must be a gold customer in order for the claim to be accepted, right? But what about standard customers? Let's add another rule. What about standard customers where the claim value is between 2 and 500 euros? Between 200 and 500. Well, here we say that in this case, the time of the theft must be between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. Right, and also in this case, the claim is accepted. All right, let's now complete the table by adding a rule for values that are greater than 500. So we take the greater operator, type in 500. And now we would say the time of the theft must be between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. and the type of the contract must be for gold customers in order for the claim to be accepted. So if the customer is a standard customer, then and the claim value is higher than 500, then we will reject it. So there's no way that standard customer claims are accepted in this case. So we would add this final rule saying that, and I will leave empty every cell, saying that in all other cases the claim is rejected. Right. What we can now do is click on this verify button over here, and this will check various properties of the table, as you will also learn in video clips 6.5 and 6.6. Let's do this. So here we can see that we have a lot of errors after this check because of overlapping rules. So for example, this error says that rules 1 and 5 overlap because they both apply for the input where the claim is below 200 euros. We have any theft time and any contract type. And this makes sense, right? So here we have less than 200, any time, any type. And also here we can have values less than 200 and any time and any type, right? So both rules apply for the same input combinations, and that's what this check is complaining about. So what happened? Did we model the table incorrectly? Not necessarily. It depends on the hit policy of the table. You will learn about hit policies of decision tables in video clip 6.5, and right now the table has the hit policy unique, as denoted by this letter U over here. The unique policy says that each rule of the table must be unique, so there must not be any overlap between the rules, and apparently this is, or obviously this is not the case here. So what we can now do is we can click on this letter and just change the hit policy to first. This says that it's okay that there is overlap between rules, and if we have an input combination where more than one rule applies, then we just take the first rule that matches. So then in this case the first rule would just be used to produce the output. Right? So we can again execute this verification test here, and then everything's fine because we changed the hit policy. All right, so this completes the decision model. We have now defined the requirements diagram and also the logic for the decision. We can now change this diagram. Let's call it claim decision. This decision model now should be called from a process, right? We have a process in mind that somehow needs to make a decision, and this decision now should be made according to this decision model. But of course, to do this, we need to link the decision to some process model. And this is what we're going to do now. let's just move this model that we just created to this folder. So I already prepared a process model called claim process. This is also the process model that you see in video clip 6.2. It's called claim process. Well, this is just the process for handling the insurance claims, right? Here the claim is received, it's registered, and then at some point we have this business rule task, which you can see because of this small table icon here. It's a business rule task. This task is supposed to produce the output that then can be determined whether to accept the claim or reject the claim. Okay, so this task now is not supposed to itself implement the decision, but it should be linked to the decision model that we just created. So what I do is I click this small table icon over here, and this way I can establish a link to a decision model. Right? So I use existing diagram here and just select the diagram that I just created. And then whenever I again click on this table icon here, I see a small preview of the linked decision model, and I can also open up the full model. Let me now show you a final feature of the Signavio Decision Manager, which is the simulation of decision. To simulate decisions, you select the simulation view over here, and then you have a slightly different view where you again see the requirements diagram. You can see all the possible inputs that you can provide and also the possible outputs, and you can see the decision table. And what we can do now is we can test different input combinations to the table or to the decision model and see what outputs result from this. So for example, we could say, what if the theft time is 2 a.m., the value of the claim is 400 euros, and the type of the contract is standard? Then we see that the output that results is no. We can also check which rule is responsible for producing this output is the lowest one, rule number 5. Let's check a slightly different input. What if the customer contract type is gold? Then the output is yes, right? And this is because in this case rule 2 fired and produced the output yes. Right, so using the simulation you can test different input combinations to your decision model and check if the result is what you expect it to be. This concludes our tutorial on the Signavio Decision Manager, and I hope you enjoy modeling your decisions.